Historic visit. Pope Francis becomes the first pope to visit North Macedonia, how he spent the day in the majority Orthodox country, and what he said on the plane ride home. Fight for the unborn. Georgia's governor signs a heartbeat bill, why the measure faces an uncertain future. Primary challenge. A pro-life Democrat representative in Illinois is in a tough fight with a pro-abortion member of his own party. And a successful campaign. First Lady Melania Trump celebrates the one-year anniversary of her signature outreach to children. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining me from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Pope Francis makes the first ever papal visit to North Macedonia. While there today, he encouraged the country to more fully integrate itself with Europe and urged them to see his visit as a chance for spiritual renewal. Catholics make up less than 1% of the population in the newly renamed country, which ended a decades-long fight with Greece. About 65% are Orthodox and a third are Muslim. Pope Francis today visited the Museum of Mother Teresa. During his homily later in the day, he praised the saint's dedication to the poor. Hannah Brockhouse joins us from Rome. Pope Francis just finished an historic trip to North Macedonia and then spoke on the plane trip back to Rome. Tell us what his impression was of the country.
Well, Lauren, Pope Francis said he was really impressed by the religious tolerance in the country. He said that the president even told him it was more than religious tolerance, but religious respect that they had for each other and for each other's faiths, and he was really impressed by that. He also said he was really moved by his meeting in North Macedonia with poor that he met at the Mother Teresa Memorial House. And that he was really touched by the tenderness with which the sisters there administer to the poor.
On Monday, Pope Francis celebrated First Holy Communion Mass with nearly 250 children. He doesn't celebrate First Holy Communion, so how did it affect him? What did he have to say about that?
He was really moved. He said actually that they sang a hymn which helped transport him back to the day of his First Holy Communion, which was October 8th, 1944, he recalled. And he said that he looks forward to seeing these children grow in the faith and that they are the future of the church and the future of Bulgaria.
In 2016, he started a commission to explore the role of women deacons in the early church. So did he give us any insight into what he's going to do with that, when he's going to share his thoughts on it?
Sure, he didn't have any clear answers about when a definitive result of that commission will come out, but he did give an update on its progress and said that for now the work has more or less stopped, that individual members are doing some research on the issue and more may come out on it, but for the moment the disagreements have sort of stalled the commission.
Hannah Brockhouse, Senior Rome Correspondent for Catholic News Agency. Thank you, Hannah. In the United States today, big news for the pro-life movement. The Republican governor of Georgia signs a heartbeat bill. It bans abortion once a baby's heartbeat is detected.
I understand, like the others have said, that some oppose this legislation. I realize that some may challenge it in the court of law. But our job is to do what is right, not what is easy.
Governor Brian Kemp says he signed the measure to ensure everyone in the state has the opportunity to live, grow, learn, and prosper. Opponents say the bill is unconstitutional and promise to fight it in court. Major abortion groups take aim at one of the House's last pro-life Democrats. NARAL Pro-Choice America, Emily's List, and Planned Parenthood are already endorsing Marie Newman as she tries again to unseat Representative Dan Lipinski in a primary next March. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi has more. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. This race asks, can an elected Democrat be pro-life? Congressman Dan Lipinski has voted in the past for the 20-week abortion ban. He also backs defunding Planned Parenthood. Challenger Marie Newman says she's the real Democrat and she's getting some early help.
8-term Congressman Dan Lipinski. Congressman Lipinski
beat progressive challenger Marie Newman by 1,500 votes.
Hi, I'm Marie Newman. I'm running for Congress here in the third.
Abortion group NARAL and their partners spent more than $1 million to help her in 2018. And now they're backing her for 2020.
Nice to meet you.
NARAL is proud to endorse a proven fighter for progressive values who can finally give Illinois' 3rd Congressional District a representative who stands with them, not anti-choice bigots and out-of-touch conservatives. This race has national implications, like it did when I questioned Newman on the day of her 2018 primary loss.
A big question is, can a Democrat be pro-life? What do you say?
So I say that I think that it's great if they're pro-life. Tim Kaine is, Joe Biden is. There's lots of good examples of pro-life folks.
This guy votes for the 20-week abortion ban. He votes to support the Little Sisters of the Poor, for example, different from maybe Tim Kaine, for example.
I wouldn't know that because I don't know that part of Mr. Lipinski's record. I do know that he said some fairly awful things about me this week about being anti-Catholic, which is absolutely not true. So that's disgusting, and I find that reprehensible.
I guess he was saying, for example, that you were supporting that HHS contraceptive mandate that would force, he said, the Little Sisters of the Poor to pay for contraception.
It doesn't, just to be clear what that law actually says. I just want to be abundantly clear. It says that you need to provide birth control, which is not what he called it.
Sterilization and also abortion.
No, it does not. No, that's absolutely wrong.
The morning after pill?
That's absolutely wrong.
That's not an abortion-inducing.
That is not an abortion-inducing drug.
Now, that mandate requires health plans to cover all FDA-approved contraception. That does include the morning after pill, which can end early pregnancy by stopping the fertilized egg from implantation. Now, Newman's answer may rest with Planned Parenthood and the American College of OBGYNs, which want to claim pregnancy doesn't begin until implantation. Lauren?
There are very few pro-life Democrats, and this race will be quite interesting to watch. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calby. Thank you, Jason. The pro-immigration group Families Belong Together unveiled an exhibit of a cage outside the U.S. Capitol today. It marks 1 year since the Trump administration's enforcement of the zero-tolerance illegal immigration policy at the southern border and of its family separation policy. The White House wants to build support for a new immigration plan spearheaded by the president's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner. President Trump invited Republican senators to meet with him today to hammer out specifics. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports on that. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. Republican lawmakers took a first look at this latest plan. Now, expect it to include some of the same measures for greater border security and a merit-based immigration system. We've heard that before, but the real difference is the man behind it, Jared Kushner. He played a major role in passing bipartisan prison reform, and now he's taking on immigration policy.
The president has always had a tremendous major goal of reforming our immigration laws.
Now charged with accomplishing that goal, Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor.
Jared Kushner and others in the White House have been working for quite a while on a big immigration plan, and we're happy that the senators are coming over to be briefed on that.
Today, Republican senators got their first look at what Kushner's plan would include. The White House hasn't released details, but previous proposals have failed to get Democrats' support. The main sticking point, a border wall.
You can't have very good border security without the wall. We have a disagreement about the wall, whether it's effective or whatever.
Void of congressional support, the president has built his administration with vocal proponents of the wall, including Mark Morgan, appointed this week to lead Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE.
Back to this immigration plan, Democrats will most likely want to see something that includes protections for dreamers, those undocumented migrants brought to the U.S. as children. We've seen some Republicans back dreamers as well, so it could be an issue that brings bipartisan support if it's included in this plan. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons. Thank you, Mark. Joining me now is Alfonso Aguilar, president for the Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles. Alfonso, welcome back.
Happy to be with you.
We just heard Mark say that the key to bipartisan support could be what President Trump does with dreamers.
Right.
So, does he have to give on dreamers to get the broader plan? And would he do it, do you think?
I think so. In the past, he's proposed legalizing dreamers, giving them a path to citizenship. I was part of some of the meetings that Jared Kushner held with different experts and groups to discuss immigration. The president asked him to look at this issue, and Jared has been looking at it from a very broad perspective, certainly looking at the importance of strengthening border security, but at the same time ensuring that the U.S. gets the foreign workers that our economy needs, moving to a more merit-based system.
Well, let's talk about that. The reports are he'll allow an additional 30,000 foreigners to come in as seasonal workers right now, and that's needed because of the booming economy. And doesn't this conflict, though, with his hardline stance on reducing the number of people entering the country?
Well, it's very interesting because seems to be some contradiction. In the past, he's talked about reducing legal immigration, but here, with the strong economy that we have, the president lately has been saying that we actually need more foreign workers. We have about 7 million jobs in this country that are unfilled, so we need those foreign workers. In this case, he wants to increase the number of people coming through the H-2B program, which are it's a visa program, non-agriculture workers that work in construction, the hospitality industry.
Well, some Republicans are even pushing back. Let's take a look at this statement from Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. We should be setting immigration policies that support wage growth and employment for Americans instead of encouraging a race to the bottom by importing low-cost labor. Is he right?
He's wrong. In fact, immigrant workers are not reducing the wages of Americans or taking away their jobs. They're actually, by filling jobs that Americans don't want or for which there are no Americans of working age, they are helping create good-paying jobs for middle-class Americans. But Senator Cotton actually doesn't represent the majority of Republicans or even conservative Republicans in the Senate and House.
Last thing, I read with shock the New York Times editorial that was written this week that said that this is a humanitarian crisis at the border and that Congress should give the president money to face it. Well, is this a tipping point for mainstream media?
Not really, because they're willing to call it a humanitarian crisis, but not a national security crisis.
So what?
They support the funding for humanitarian needs, but not to increase the number of beds in deportation centers. And we actually need to expand our capacity to hold people in deportation centers. So it's a good first step for the New York Times, but they still have to recognize that this is a humanitarian crisis, but it's also a national security crisis.
National security.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Alfonso Aguilar, president of the Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles. President Trump issues a full pardon to a former United States soldier convicted of killing an Iraqi prisoner. Former First Lieutenant Michael Behenna of Oklahoma was found guilty in 2009. He was paroled in 2014. He had served 5 years. The sentence was 25 years in prison. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says the pardon received broad support from the military and the state's elected officials. Coming up, remembering a Catholic who spent more than 50 years helping the developmentally disabled. Vice President Mike Pence announces the U.S. is upping the pressure on the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. This afternoon, the vice president laid out a series of steps the administration is taking to force Maduro to step down. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the State Department, where the vice president wrapped up his speech. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. The vice president is demanding Nicolas Maduro give up his power, saying the single greatest disruptor in Latin America is Venezuela. Pence blames Maduro's government for the economic and diplomatic crisis facing the country. He also blames Maduro for the millions of people who are suffering.
We're told that thieves in Venezuela don't rob banks because with inflation at 1,000,000% a year, money is basically worthless. Instead, they rob restaurants for food. Vicious gangs and the notorious colectivos have turned the streets into war zones.
The vice president announced the United States will provide aid to Venezuelan refugees, saying that in June, a Navy hospital ship called the Comforter will deploy to the Caribbean, which holds about 1,000 beds. In addition, the United States will soon sanction 25 magistrates on Venezuela's Supreme Court who are loyal to Maduro. Pence spoke and made these announcements at the Washington Conference of the Americas, which addresses some of the biggest challenges facing the region. Now, Pence wasn't the only big speaker today. The new president-elect of El Salvador discussed a wide range of issues, including the violence which has led to tens of thousands of people to flee his country heading towards the United States. Nayib Bukele says he wants good relations between the U.S. and El Salvador. Many lawmakers, foreign diplomats, and business leaders have been speaking throughout the day. One common thread, everyone wants an end to the turmoil in Venezuela. Last week, the opposition leader, Juan Guaido, led massive street protests in the capital, but he failed to overthrow Maduro. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. The president of Sri Lanka says his country is now safe. He adds 99% of the suspects in the Easter Sunday attacks on churches and hotels have been arrested or are dead. The attacks killed at least 250 people. Today, one of the churches, St. Anthony's in Colombo, was partially opened for the first time since Easter Sunday. Catholics have celebrated Sunday Mass at home for the past 2 weekends over fears of another strike. News Nightly reached out to the Archdiocese to see if Masses will resume this weekend. We haven't heard back yet. The Associated Press reports hundreds of women and girls from Pakistan's Christian minority have been trafficked in recent months to China as brides. One girl says her Chinese husband beat her after she said she wanted to go to church on Christmas. She's back in Pakistan and wants a divorce. The report says brokers seek out Pakistani girls for Chinese men. Sometimes they cruise outside churches to ask for potential brides. Parents receive several $1,000s and are told their new sons-in-law are wealthy Christian converts. Jean Vanier is a Catholic and a hero to the developmentally disabled. He has died at age 90. The Canadian founded the charity L'Arche in 1964. Its goal, to help the developmentally disabled become members of the community rather than being kept apart in a hospital. His communities are in 38 countries around the world. They are home to thousands of people, both with and without disabilities. Up next, Catholics gather in Washington, D.C. to honor first responders, and how the First Lady is expanding her Be Best initiative. In many European countries, citizens pay a church tax. That's money that is allocated to the taxpayer's official religious affiliation. It results in billions of euros every year to support religious institutions. A new study by the Pew Research Center shows the majority of people are willing to continue to pay that tax. In Denmark, 80% say they pay the church tax, followed by 76% in Austria, 71% in Germany and Finland. Joining me now is Neha Segal, Associate Director of Research at the Pew Research Center for Europe. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to our broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
In Europe, churches don't take up a collection during Mass, and instead they don't donate money to the church. Is that correct?
They may also do that. They may
Yes.
also take up a collection, and people may tithe, which, as you know, is voluntary. However, there's an additional sort of system for church funding in Europe, which is different from what we have in the United States.
So this tax is self-reported, right? In other words, it's up to the taxpayer to identify as the member of the church.
That's correct. However, many people are registered when they're baptized. So they're in the church rolls and they're registered as Christians with their church, and then they will be taxed at that point. So if they wanted to stop paying the tax, of course, they have the option of doing that, but they would need to physically, sort of formally take steps to deregister as
Meaning saying, I am not a Catholic, pull my baptism record.
That is absolutely
Okay,
correct.
so according to your study, a small percentage of people are opting out, very small, of this church tax, but most say they're likely to continue paying
That
the
is
tax in the future. Let's take a look at some of these statistics. So 88% of respondents in Denmark say they're going to continue, and then that's followed by Austria, Germany, and Finland at 77%, 78%, and 87%. So what do these numbers say? What does that really mean?
Well, they do show us that there's a willingness to continue funding the churches. Now, this is quite surprising because, as we know, Europe is a highly secular place. There are very few people going to church on it with any regularity, very few people praying, etc., and a growing share of people are actually identifying as religiously unaffiliated. So they're saying they're either atheists or they're agnostics or they have no religion in particular. So the question question becomes, why in this secular place
Exactly.
are people okay with paying a tax?
Right, when you would think that they would look at that and say, well, I don't even go to church, so therefore I'm not paying this tax. But what do you think it is? What's the key? What do people just have more? Is it more in their identity of who they are?
That certainly could be, and there can be many factors, and they can vary from person to person, but the data does point to one sort of interesting pattern, and that is that we find that people who pay the tax do see churches as a public utility. So, for example, they tell us that churches play an important role in, for example, helping the poor and needy, or strengthening community bonds. So in that sense, they see churches as playing a role in society, an important role in society, and they want to continue supporting that role.
There are some people who think that the church tax shouldn't exist. So given what you learned in the survey and in your research, how likely is that to happen and to continue as a trend, that the numbers would go down, that they wouldn't support the church?
In terms of public opinion, we just don't see that there is any evidence of a mass exodus away from paying the church tax, even though these countries do have a system whereby you can opt out and you can reduce your tax bill. But it just doesn't seem like a lot of people are there yet.
Fascinating study, Dr. Neha Segal. Thank you so much from Pew Research. Appreciate your time. The New York Court of Appeals allows the remains of Venerable Fulton Sheen to be moved to Peoria, Illinois. It is in accordance with the family's wishes and might pave the way for Archbishop Sheen's beatification, which is a step toward possible sainthood. The Archdiocese of New York, however, had argued that his remains should stay in St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan. For more on this story, including a look at the legal battles between church officials in Peoria and New York over Archbishop Sheen, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Today marked the 25th annual Blue Mass at Washington, D.C.'s St. Patrick's Catholic Church. It honors the work of police officers and firefighters and remembers the fallen. More than 1,500 law enforcement officers have died in the line of duty during the past 10 years. The Blue Mass, as it's called, began in 1934. It has been observed annually since 1994. Participants of all faiths include officers and firefighters from local, state, and federal agencies. Finally tonight, it is the first anniversary of Melania Trump's Be Best campaign, which is dedicated to helping children prevent online bullying and fight drug abuse. But the First Lady says more work is needed.
I have also expanded my focus of the dangers of opioid abuse to include kids of all ages, and will continue to work with partner agencies to highlight and promote the programs and resources available for all who struggle with addiction.
The First Lady also said she will make another international trip this fall, though the destination has not been revealed. Last year, she promoted Be Best through 4 countries in Africa. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. Good night, and God bless you.